All right, welcome everybody to Prodigal and the Priest, a podcast about faith, sports, and two friends from different cultures. I'm Joey Scansella, joined by my great co-host and friend, Father Paul Bechter. Father Paul, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Joey. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited. For our viewing listeners who didn't just get to experience what just happened in this room, is we went through about 10 minutes of this podcast and we had forgotten to hit record on the board. So take dose.
That's
take two.
Spanish.
That's right. And we should remind our listeners, you can listen on Spotify, podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all those areas. But in addition, YouTube, you can actually watch us on YouTube. And who wouldn't?
It's delightful.
It's sometimes I just put it on when I want to lay in bed and have nothing else to do. I just watch my own podcast.
Listen to my own voice and watch myself try and drink coffee on the air without making an audible swallowing sound into the mic.
I just like tap my wife, Nikki, pregnant at 9 months pregnant, and be like, hey, you should check this out. Check this great clip of me out on YouTube. So anyway, we got an awesome episode for you today. Make sure to check us out on YouTube under St. Anne Catholic. There's a whole playlist of Prodigal and the Priest starting with episode 8 or 9. I had this idea. I wanted to talk about life in the bubble. And we'll explain that a little bit. So, we have NBA back. Boom. Excited.
So excited. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, this is like our childhood right there. Like NBA Jam. You ever play that game? He's on fire. That one? No? Okay. Anyway, so NBA's back. NHL is back. Major League Baseball is still currently going, and Major League Baseball is my favorite sport. But it brings up a question about the bubble, okay? And for those who don't know what we're talking about is when the NBA started back, they came up with this idea and they said, hey, we're not just going to play games at all these different stadiums. We're going to rent out this area from Disney, house all our players there, build a court there, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like the players are quarantined there and they have like strict protocol about when they're allowed in and they're not allowed to leave, and they had to go through that 2 week, like kind of.
You enter the bubble, you're put off into some other chamber of the bubble to quarantine for your 2 weeks till you get all your negative tests.
Yeah.
Then you come out and you can enter life into the bubble. And so like the NBA players, everything is in there.
Everything. Hairdresser.
Yeah, I think they were offering like local hairdressers, different sort of 4-week stints, but they had to go through the whole quarantine and everything.
Exactly. Like they seem really on top of it. Like the NBA.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
And they've had no positive cases in the bubble. And
neither has the NHL. And the NHL has done something similar with 2 host cities because they have a few more teams, I think, than the NBA. But it brings up this question now with everything going on in Major League Baseball where people wonder, are we going to finish this season, which I so want this season to finish because we've been seeing...
Ball game over. Yankees win. The Yankees win.
Yeah,
they're like the top
nice
team in Major League Baseball right now. Dude, Aaron Judge.
Aaron Judge is extremely impressive.
He is a beast.
Sunday, I think I caught both of his home runs on Sunday evening.
Mammoth.
And just clutch, mammoth. It's just
and
impressive.
That's a Rangers fan speaking.
That's a Rangers fan speaking.
Right.
But 7-1 in the bubble is
no bubble. Yeah.
Is pretty. Oh yeah. Wait.
Yeah,
that's the whole point of our segment.
That's
7-1,
which
not in the bubble. 7-1 in the new season, in the COVID season.
That's right. Which brings up though that thing to say like Major League Baseball didn't seem as much on top of it. Why didn't they do a bubble, right? Or even now, what people are really talking about is football.
Right.
Why didn't they consider a bubble, right? Why didn't they consider housing everybody at like the Gaylord Texan here, right here? There's all these stadiums.
Some enormous hotel, stadium complex, like building stuff. They do this for the Olympics. And I know it sounds ridiculous to say, just do what the Olympics do. But the NFL has so much money. It's
So
not
much.
It's not even right. And they could actually do something like this. And they probably don't have time anymore.
No, they don't have
but
time.
But they had more time than anybody to prepare.
And Dallas would have probably been perfect for it.
Yeah, it would have.
Dude, they have the Star they could have played games at.
Mm-hmm.
They got AT&T Stadium. They had probably the old ballpark in Arlington, which they were making.
What are they doing with that right now?
Exactly. Allen High School is like a multi-million-dollar like high school level field. You have SMU, UNT, like all these places around TCU, like all these places around here. You know, I don't know. And by money, you're right. Like some have said, well, they don't have the money to put people in a bubble for several months. Really, NFL generated about $15 billion in revenue.
Yeah, last year.
That's 1 year. They don't
have
that
money. A year after
money.
their $8 billion. And I know that there's a lot more people involved with football teams.
Right.
A lot more players and all the coaches and assistants and trainers and everything. Like it would be like building a city. But I think they could actually do it. And I just don't see how they're actually going to finish a season. They may be able to start.
Yeah.
But what do you do when a COVID outbreak hits your offensive line? And so the whole defensive line for the other team is down. And your quarterback, which is like, we're just going to play with a bunch of like third string backup quarterbacks every other game.
Now Andy Dalton signing is looking even more impressive. That's right. No, but that's a good point. You know, Major League Baseball can at least say, well, we're going to do 7-inning double headers.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in the NFL?
Those are only 7 innings?
They're switching to 7 innings. Yeah, I'm not a big fan personally. What is this, Little League?
Like a softball game.
Yeah. Slow pitch
softball players.
Yeah, no offense to Church League slow pitch softball players. Thank you. But you think about it, like, please watch on YouTube right now. Everybody go to YouTube because Father Paul drinks loudly and is trying to evade the mic so that it's not picked up, even though I have a mute button that I could easily just hit here, which is great. But yeah, what do you do? What do you do with this aspect of, you know, the bubble and that? And, you know, in the NFL, you can't make up, we'll just play 2 games today, right? Like,
no.
Like, they're going to have to shut it down.
Yeah. And it really makes me sad.
Right.
Football is not my favorite sport. Growing up in Bermuda, we didn't have that much access to football. It's a British place. And so it's kind of low on the totem pole, but I still like it a lot. Like it's very entertaining. And they get all their money from TV anyway.
Right.
Like, yes, you know, they also get tons of money from people paying these exorbitant fees and parking fees and everything. And,
yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know what excuse they have other than we watched everyone else do different things and decided to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
And you have the most revenue.
Yeah.
Like, and you had the most time.
Mm-hmm.
So they saw what the NBA was doing. They're like, great. They saw what, you know, NHL was doing. Great. They've seen what MLB is doing. They're like, great. All these info. And they didn't have the time to come up with that. It's just, to me, it's kind of egregious. You know, like I think on management and that, and I think it boils down to greed, them saying, I think they all thought in their heads, things are getting better. We're going to have fans, which means more money in the owner's pocket, which is like, okay, we want that. And then they didn't expect kind of this like wave and large numbers and cases and so many states being like.
Don't get that. Like, that seems so naive. If that's really the thought, like people were predicting that from the beginning. Everybody expected it.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Maybe not quite this early, but, or at least in Texas.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But
it's crazy. But this brought up an interesting like idea within the faith that I wanted to toss out to you is life in the Catholic bubble faith, right?
Mm.
The Catholic bubble.
To bubble or not to bubble?
Right. Like, it's a very like disputed thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember during my time at Franciscan University how many people had strong opinions about like, well, you're just, you're living life in this Catholic bubble up at Franciscan. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like, but I'm being formed there during some of the most important years of my life. And second isn't this what we want the world to be?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so it's honestly the struggle for a lot of people being like, should you do that? Where's the line, though, of being like living in the world but not of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't JP2 say that? Like, you're called to live in the world but not of the world?
Jesus said that, Joey. The Gospel of John.
I think he copied JP2.
JP2 might have said that. Jesus
First.
said that.
Yeah. We'll go on the official
Yeah,
record
OG.
by saying JP2. Okay, so right, but like it's a real thing. You know, I know some people. I have friends that are like not going to support anywhere that gives the Planned Parenthood, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, how far down do you go? Like, it's like, oh, this gas station, this grocery store, this place. Like, can you even find a place that doesn't, by its like second, third, whatever, do that? You know, like, so it brings up a lot. So I just want to toss that out and say initial thoughts, like the Catholic bubble life.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to set aside just for the moment. I don't know if we'll get back there, but the contributing to like companies that support Planned Parenthood, that's a question of what is my cooperation in this evil? And that's a little bit different question than we're talking about with a bubble.
Yeah.
It is related.
Right.
But yeah, I want to treat the big one first. Sorry, that came out weird. I was like, so the question is more when people think of Catholic bubbles of any kind.
Right.
They think of like a defensive stance, a retreat from the world, right? Catholic colleges like UD and Franciscan, I guess more so Franciscan. I don't know.
Probably.
Or even things like monastic life, right? Like a secular view is you're throwing your life away. Why are you doing that? You're going to do this useless thing.
Right.
And a reason for somebody entering that kind of life, it could be a good or a bad reason, but it might be like, I'm fleeing from the world. That's kind of traditional language in our faith, the flight from the world.
Right. Don't want to deal with the reality of everything that happens, so you're running from it.
Yeah. And so that's normally levied as a criticism right now. But just on face value, there is important precedence for this in the tradition.
Right.
You've got St. Anthony of Egypt retreating out of the city of, I guess, Alexandria. I forget where, but he was from Egypt. Went out into the Egyptian desert to flee the corrupt culture of his time. And people followed him out there, and then the deserts were so full of like Egyptian hermit monks that I don't think they were that quiet. After a while, Saint Benedict does the same thing. He studied in Rome. When is he from? Like 500s? Sounds
Sure.
about right.
Yeah, I think from my calculations.
Yeah. Get out your. Okay, I don't even know what those geometric things are.
Oh,
your
like
astrolabe or something.
Oh, I thought you were going for like an abacus. Abacus?
Yeah, that's accounting.
Yeah.
Like an
sure.
early calculator.
Okay, go ahead.
So Saint Benedict lived in Rome as a young man and saw the corruption of the city and basically said, I can't survive in this. And so he retreated. And then he gained a reputation for holiness, and people followed and wanted to live around him, and thus was Benedictine life born.
Right.
So there is a precedent for this kind of defensive retreat.
Right.
That's just kind of a first pass at the question, right? Because it's not saying any and all defensive retreats of this kind are good.
Right.
We're called to be leaven in the midst of the world. A light to the world, salt that doesn't lose its taste, leaven a little bit of which causes the whole lump of dough. Like that is our role as Christians, is to transform the culture, and it seems difficult to do that again on face value
Right.
if you retreat.
Right.
And so I think
Hide it under a bushel.
yeah.
No.
Yeah. So there's that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And that makes it right away a question of prudence and of circumstances. One answer isn't going to fit every circumstance for this. Maybe the best metaphor which comes to mind for me right now is like a little plant or something. Say you got some seeds, and maybe they were mailed from China and one of these weird things that's going on right now, and you wanted to plant them. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
But say you had some seeds and you knew the plant was delicate. You're going to grow it up in help it grow in a protected area.
Yeah.
Like a little greenhouse
yeah.
or inside in a pot, and you're going to take care of it until it gets strong enough to live
You're
out.
gonna put one of those sticks on so it leans. Those sticks in the ground so it can grow up and lean and all
like
that.
a trellis.
Yeah.
For a vine.
Yeah.
And actually that's important because like some plants always need that. They can't support themselves. Other ones, once they've had enough time, grow up and are strong enough to be out in the wild.
Right.
And not like eaten by birds or bugs or whatever, or destroyed by Texas summer. I think our faith is really like that. And so like that's where this question kind of the rubber hits the road for me is, and where you're able to make a decision, do I bubble or do I not bubble, and to what extent? It comes from an honesty about the maturity of your faith and the support that you have.
Right.
Our culture is hostile to the faith.
Right.
Not just ours, but like the world. That's how John puts it in his gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He talks about the kingdom of God and the world.
Right.
And there is a hostility towards the good news of the gospel that would seek to extinguish it.
Right.
There always has been. Ours is pronounced in specific ways right now.
Right.
But it's not a new thing. And so, especially for somebody whose faith is budding, I say, lean towards the bubble. Like you need that. If you're in college, for instance, right?
Yeah.
I went to UD, and I not only found my faith there, like rediscovered it for kind of the first time, but it had a privileged environment where it could grow up and flourish. And I mean, that was this singular experience of my life.
Right.
And then joining seminaries. Seminaries are semi-monastic models for the same reason.
Yeah.
You need to be able to control some of the environment to allow formation to take place and faith to continue to mature and people to grow.
Right.
That's what you would do in a household also, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, like you have to control certain things.
Right.
You can't control everything. And when you're trying to get somebody to grow up and become a mature adult, they have to be exposed to what the world is like.
Right.
And I would assume as a parent, you want to sort of try and control that as best you can, but you recognize that you can't control everything. And that, if you keep somebody inside, then they never play in the dirt and get all the dirt antibodies or whatever, the, immune system.
Yeah. Maybe we can edit that one out.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
So, yeah, that's how I would think if I was say father of a family.
I was going to say
think,
though,
where would I move? What would I do?
Yeah, you're the father of a family because not that if we have any priests or clergy listening to our podcast, awesome. But I think a lot of families probably are listening and say, yeah, but what does that mean for me? Do I
homeschool?
Do I send them to public? Do I not? Do I have only Christian and Catholic friends? Do I not? It's this tough balance of being like, well, I know this other kid who's not, is going to influence my kids, right? We have a next door neighbor who is a little bit older than my children and likes to use the Lord's name in vain.
Mm.
And my kids just play together in the backyards. They'll play hockey. They'll go on the swings, different things like that. Well, all of a sudden one night, hear my son use the Lord's name in vain, like that effect, and being like, man, yeah, sometimes I do want to live in a bubble. But then how do you at all like spread the faith,
Right.
like evangelize? I think it is, it's harder than we think.
Yeah, for sure.
NFL is figuring this out, and we're figuring this out, right?
Mhm.
But you have a kid, you have kids. Imagine that, right? You do.
Hypothetically, yes.
Yes. Let me back up. Father Paul does not have any children. Hypothetically, if you did, I mean, yeah, what would you do?
Yeah. I mean, so like when I say this is a prudential decision, it means that like you have to take all the factors into account when you make that kind of decision. So like just by personality, I would tend towards more of a bubble mentality. I would tend towards homeschool the kids, maybe church shop until I found one that I was absolutely satisfied with. Like sort of do everything I can to create kind of a bubble. I don't think I would actually move out to one of these like sort of Catholic hubs. There aren't that
Like a
many
commune?
of them. Yeah, I was trying to avoid using that word. But like sometimes there are Catholic communities that grow up around like intentionally. And I don't know. Like sometimes those can be really good. Other times it seems kind of artificial. I don't even know what exactly. It would depend on what I was doing for work as well. But a model I really like, and I guess what I would try to do would be something that I saw in Italy with this particular community called the Tipiloschi. They like Pier Giorgio Frassati.
Nice.
And they call themselves the shady types, the Tipiloschi.
Right.
And I had friends when I was in seminary and a priest over there who would go and hang out with them and would go celebrate Mass for them and stuff like that. So I heard a lot about them. I never actually got to really immerse myself in that community that much, but they're this really vibrant Catholic community. And it just started off with some Catholic friends who started having families, and then were like, we need to hang out more. And so like every Wednesday, all the families would go over to one house and they would have dinner together and pray a rosary. And then that came to like, let's do this a little bit more often. And so it was like Wednesday and Friday, Friday will be this night and Wednesday we'll do this.
Right.
And then it's like, well, I mean, if we're going to be doing this all the time, why don't we just move closer together? And so they moved onto one block, and then they kind of took over the block. And now it's this beautiful lay community, and they've been very intentional about maintaining those bonds of friendship and of Christian fraternity, and sort of have a bubble aspect to it, but it's a very mission oriented thing.
I think that's the key right there.
There's an openness to people coming in, and they serve the community and they do all this. So there's the two sides of like, I can't do anything to help if my own faith is so bombarded by the culture that it's like a smoldering wick.
Right.
It needs to have enough protection from the outside air that it can like burst into flame.
Right.
Otherwise, I can't do anything. I can't give what I don't have. Basic
Right.
principle. And if I don't have God in my life, how am I expected to give Him to the culture? But then from there, like, there's also another sort of basic principle of the spiritual life where the more you focus on yourself, the less you actually growing spiritually.
Right.
I was talking with some people a little while ago, and they talked about this book they were reading called Kindness. It's by Sophia Press. It sounded really good, and they used this. There was just this very simple line in there, like this sort of early 1900s kind of wisdom,
Right.
Almost kind of like Fulton Sheen kind of voice, just practical wisdom. if you find that you're unhappy, it's probably because you're thinking about yourself too much. Like, go and be kind to somebody. Like, I think get out of yourself. And that is how we grow in the spiritual life. And so sometimes in trying, and this is where the legit criticism of the bubble mentality comes in. Sometimes when you are trying to protect your faith, you're actually stifling it. Right? Because it needs to be exposed to, okay, let's stick with the flame imagery.
Yeah.
But like, if the faith is a fire, it needs fuel. And okay, maybe you've got it to a roaring flame in your own life, but then you are, by making too tight a bubble, you're keeping out necessary oxygen, and it doesn't have the wood it needs to burn. And that seems to only happen when you're actually sharing the faith with somebody.
Right.
Or happen most effectively.
Right.
It's not something that you can keep to yourself and have burst in or continue this roaring flame.
Yeah. And kind of on one last note, I want to say something to the parents real quick, and that is, you need to pray to the Holy Spirit for guidance on this, right? We are called to get our children to heaven.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be judged upon the call. Did I get them a sports scholarship?
Mm-hmm.
Did I get them the best academics, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to answer before the Lord, say, what did you do for your children's holiness? And we need to take that serious as parents and pray for that. I remember so vividly this one homily by Father Edwin Leonard, who came to a 4:30 youth mass. He had just become vocations director, and he said to the parents in attendance, he said, the biggest obstacle to vocations and my job is not the devil, is parents who think they know what is best, for their child, and never lets God into that plan. And it just always stuck with me. And it's always it's something that Nikki and me, pray often for and say, all right, Lord, how do we make saints out of our kids? And it's not perfect, and it's not easy, and it's a continuous conversation. And I mean, gosh, we could probably talk, an hour and a half on this, because there are a bunch of different things. I'm sure people say, well, what about this? Or what about this? Or what about that?
Or what about parents whose kids are grown and, they did kind of everything they could.
Right.
You can always do better, but they legitimately tried, and then some drifted away, some didn't.
Right.
To that, just, again, first pass, what I would say is it doesn't mean stop praying for him.
Yeah. St. Monica.
Yeah, exactly.
Good example.
Like St. Monica prayed for her son, St. Augustine.
What was it, 39 years? 32, 39. It's in the 30s.
Lot. Yeah, he was in his
30s.
Yeah. But he was, by all reckoning, just completely lost, given over to a licentious life, rising through the ranks of power and education in the Roman world, and just not living as a Christian even slightly.
Yeah.
And
father of the church now.
Yeah, doctor.
Doctor.
Yeah. Church father and
sorry.
doctor of the church.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had this enormous conversion, and she had just been praying for him constantly. That is a parent's call as well. Do everything you can, trust in God. It's actually a phrase from St. Augustine where he says, work as if everything depends on you, pray as if everything depends on God.
Love that.
That's kind of what we have to do in any situation, but especially in these, when you're talking about other human beings whom you can't control, and you want to protect, and you want to do everything you can for, and that is your job.
Yeah.
You can't judge success and failure from your own eyes. It has to be from God's perspective, who alone knows the heart.
Yeah. All right. Watching, reading, thinking. I'll start.
Yeah,
I'm reading, just started Multiply by Francis Chan. Author, really good. Also, to stay on the Francis Chan thing, I was watching one of his talks from a recent conference as well. In addition to a lot of hockey, NBA, baseball, any of this. And what are you thinking is, I'm thinking that I want my kids to be holy and I want my kids to be saints. And I'm praying for that so much. You're
Nice.
up. Try to beat that one.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry. Yeah, so I am still reading, kind of continuation, a book on putting, a golf book. It's just bringing me back. I was obsessed with this book and others when I was younger and really into golf. And it's been, I love that I'm old enough I can say this now. It's been like 15 years since I looked at it or so. At least, 12, 15
Right.
years.
It's like Putting for Dummies. What's the title?
No, it's called Dave Pelz's Putting Bible. And it's got like all this science in there, but it was also written in like the 90s or
That's
80s.
awesome.
It's pretty awesome. It had a huge impact on me back then, and now that I'm getting back into golf, I'm able to play more now that I'm back in the States. It's just bringing back a lot of stuff that I remembered. Or that I'd sort of interiorized from before. So I'm reading that. I'm watching sports. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Watching whatever's on ESPN.
Mm.
That's kind of the only one I know how to access because I just watch it from my phone. But some golf, some basketball, some baseball. It's
Everything,
just
yeah.
wonderful. And what am I thinking? That I really want Joey's kids to be holy and to become saints. And all of your kids to become, and that's my job, is to lay down my life so that you might have life.
Yeah,
Okay, I
you
shouldn't play it that.
You would. Well, we thank everybody for joining us today on Prodigal and the Priest. Remember to to go to St. Anne Catholic, check out our YouTube page or wherever you listen to us on. Also, make sure to submit any questions you have. prodigalandthepriest@gmail.com or stanneparish.org/PTP. For Joey Scancella and Father Paul Bechter, we say take care.
God bless.